Welcome to the Path Forward podcast. This is sponsored by the Second Opportunity Program. My name is Augie Ghilarducci, and I'm your host. And we're going to talk today with Kenny Hunter. Kenny, welcome, and thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it, man. I appreciate the opportunity.
Great. So, just by way of introduction, for those of you that have just arrived into a facility or are just looking at the Second Opportunity, the Path Forward podcast brought by Second Opportunity for the first time. What I do, I'm Augie Ghilarducci. I was incarcerated for 13 years, and I've been out since 2017. And I started the podcast a little over a year ago. We started in January of 2024. We do a new episode every 2 weeks, and I'm constantly looking for men and women that have been incarcerated and have gone through that process and have re-entered society and gone through the bumps and bruises that go along with re-entry, but also come out in a situation where their message is one of hope and inspiration. And I'm really clear with the guests to say that's what we want to do. I want people on the inside that watch this. We normally go about 30 minutes or so. That 30 minutes from now, you're going to feel just a little bit better because you're going to have heard something that's uplifting or has you feeling more positive about when you do release. So, Kenny, let's get started. As we always do, I'd like you to kind of talk us through your youth and, where you grew up and some of the things that you enjoyed doing, whether it was sports or school or those types of things. If you just kind of walk us through and let us get to know you a little bit, please.
Yeah. So first of all, thanks again for having me. I am from Virginia, specifically Lynchburg, Virginia. I was born and raised in a city called Lynchburg. And to be honest with you, the name didn't sound as odd until I left Lynchburg and looked back at it. But yes, the name of the city was Lynchburg, and I grew up there. Home of Liberty University, Lynchburg University, and some schools. Came from a pretty cool household. My father is a Vietnam veteran. My mother was from Danville, Virginia, and she was a seamstress. And we were of little means, but we were a very close knit household and extremely religious. My parents were Jehovah's Witnesses. Family was Jehovah's Witness, and I guess I kind of just grew up like the normal kid, man, liking sports. Me and my siblings and all of my family, because my neighborhood was a pretty much a old rural country neighborhood where everybody's kin to each other, and we all kind of grew up as a little team of kids, and as kids we didn't know any better. We were just having fun outside. As I grew into the teen years, I think I was still similar to most teenagers, but I kind of rebelled against some of the rules and structures of my household, and they had really strict ways of dealing with it. And though I was born in poverty, I wasn't born in the hood like the streets. I went to the streets actually after I kind of parted ways with my family due to just circumstances. And I ended up in the streets. I ended up selling drugs. And, I wasn't a thug or a gangster. I was just good with math. And I understood sales at a young age. And I was successful and hadn't had much. And it was an addictive way of life. I often say that like selling drugs is just as addictive as doing them, if not more. So I just got kind of caught up into that lifestyle, and the timing was the perfect storm for me to get caught during the height of mass incarceration. 1999, when tough on crime had been passed in 1994 and 95, all of these policies and laws that had done away with parole and second chances, and my very first time being sentenced to prison, I was sentenced to 23 years, 9 months, and 75 days. And I ended up spending 22 years in the Virginia Department of Corrections for a nonviolent drug offense.
Did you bounce around on the inside from institution to institution?
Absolutely. I call it my state tour. 22 years in prison, as you know, from the sentence that you did, like that's a very, that's a long time. There's a lot of chapters in that story. And I came to prison young. I was 21 years old when I got locked up. So I came as a young guy, full of energy, full of rebellion, full of resentment towards the system for the situation I had found myself in. And very early on, I kind of fashioned myself into a revolutionary mindset, for better or worse. And so, that I came to prison, and though I had a nonviolent drug offense while I was at the jail, I had what they called an escape attempt, and it's a little exaggerated, but that in Virginia they have a point system that determines your security level, and that elevated my security level so that the very first prison I went to was a supermax institution that you see in the news all the time up to until this day, Red Onion State Prison in the mountains of Virginia and Western Virginia, and that kind of started my path off. And I bounced all around, man, all around the state at different facilities, going to low level facilities, back to high level facilities. I had quite an interesting journey.
So that obviously 22 years is an enormous amount of time. But if I were to meet one of your former cellmates that you were together for a while and ask, what was Kenny like? How did he spend his time? What was his reputation among the men that he saw every day? What do you think they would tell me?
I think you would get a variety of answers, but I think consistently it would be that I was a dude that was really in touch with the circumstances that had me and a lot of people that look like me incarcerated. And so, I was fortunate. I ran into one of my best friends as soon as I got to Red Onion, and he was already on like a path of education and enlightenment. And though we were on that path, it wasn't like a goody two shoes path. It was more like a study. And it's funny because that is what allowed me to build this bond and kind of later on become a bridge between, or a voice for those incarcerated, to the administration, to political leaders and things of that nature, because I had an understanding of it. But I was very kind of, rebellious against the rules and the structure that I felt was oppressive. And also, I don't shy away from the fact that I was just the guy that was trying to get, I rebelled at every turn. I was getting contraband. I was, cell phones. I was definitely that kind of guy while incarcerated, because I believed in both sides of it, and I felt like we had a right to resist some of the rules and regulations that was forced upon us, because I felt like the majority of us, including myself, did not deserve to be in there. So I think, overall, I just feel like, and to this day, I've been home 4 years now. 4 years on March the 8th, and till this day, uh, I have a very good reputation and great relationship with individuals incarcerated here in Virginia. Like, it's a lot of love, a lot of support, because I've been in the trenches with them, and they know how genuine I am about making some changes.
So when you talk about study and educating and enlightening, what were some of the things that you did? Were there particular subjects that were of interest to you? And so you were gone for several decades. Today, most everything is on tablets, but when you started, there certainly were no tablets in there. So, physical books out of the library or book cart or some such thing. Is that how you started with this?
Absolutely. And education, man, I'm sure we'll discuss it later, but I work in the education space where I'm trying to promote education. And there's different types of education. I was at an event with Aunt Viv from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air the other night, and I asked her a question about the intersection of cultural and secular education. Just because there's this formal way of getting education, and then there's this need for a cultural understanding of who we are, where we come from, how we got to this moment. And I came, and honestly, it was my desire was selfish in the beginning, because in the beginning I just was like, what in the world? How did I get 23 years? How did I end up in this situation where I have 23 years? And I couldn't attach it to anything like a armed robbery or murder or something that I could say, all right, you got me. It was just I knew it was off. And because of that, I started studying. I just went down this rabbit hole of, how do we get to this point? What is truth and sentencing? And then truth and sentencing took me on a historical dive into American history. And then you realize that what we've been taught about history is very limited. And so you start digging back farther into history and how America came about. What was the backdrop that brought folks over here to this country to start the country that we know as America? So yeah, it was a delve into a lot of subjects, a lot of different disciplines, and hey, I had 22 years to do it. And that is kind of what fed me. Like every time I would learn something new, every time I would learn something new, I would want an opportunity to share it. Like you learn something new that changes your perspective. And I'm at the table the next morning at breakfast, sharing it with my comrades. So then I'm having, I'm creating relationships at facilities with counselors who are allowing me to plan programs and facilitate programs and to do seminars and things of that nature. And I was just about that. That's just what that was me. That's how I got down, And like I said, it wasn't squeaky clean, but I think that that's what resonated with folks. It's like, yo, he's not just a guy trying to tell everybody what to do. I'm just trying to make everybody aware so that we can make better decisions on how we deal with it.
So I have to ask, when you were doing that and you're talking to counselors about doing some sort of a seminar or workshop or whatever to share some of this knowledge that you're obtaining and translating it into personal circumstance. Um, were you doing that? Did it at all at that time with everything going on around you, long sentence, all these other things? Did it ever cross your mind that this might be the type of thing that you would be interested in doing professionally when you were done with your sentence?
Yes. Yes. Not in this, not necessarily in this capacity, because unfortunately 22 years in this current era that we are in, 22 years is a super long time. So long that it is very hard to navigate a world that has changed so much. Technology upgrades, all of these things make it hard for you to be able to envision society. You think you know, but you're watching TV in a world where no one watches TV. That's your exposure.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like I knew that what I did know though was that too many people don't know, and that's on both sides, directly impacted as well as the society, which is what I've learned when even more so when I came home, that a lot of the people that I've that have, we have disagreements or will be seen as adversaries, a lot of them are just guilty of ignorance. They're not like inherently evil people. They just do not have exposure to the system, to the inside, to even know exactly how these things play out, how these policies play out. And so I always saw that need to like make people aware because I felt like awareness leads to better decisions for some folks.
So yeah, the one of the terms I like to use a lot is raise awareness. Right. I don't want to presuppose I'm going to teach somebody something, but I want to raise awareness because if they haven't had the experience, if they haven't, if they don't have an understanding of how the system works, not based on what the book says, but based on actually going through the system, I want to raise awareness that that's not quite how it is. And, there's a lot more to it. It's interesting the way that you talked about that. Um, I think that sometimes because we don't know when we release how much change has actually gone on, some of it is at a fundamental level of society, right? I mean, it's not just the technology that makes things move faster and in more colors and all these other things, but it's at a fundamental level. And one of the things that, I've been out, whatever it is now, 7.5 years, but one of the most discouraging things to me is that people, they don't communicate the way they used to. If we disagree, we now are enemies. We just aren't two guys that disagree that can talk things through. And at the end, as they say, agree to disagree. Now we've got to be enemies because your opinion about something is different than mine. And the other thing is that, the use of technology as a substitute for human conversation. I run into young people a lot because of what I do going in and outside of facilities and working on the outside too. And really there there's so many younger people that I run into that they're not able to have a conversation. They're not able to look you in the eyes and shake your hand. They're not able to communicate because they're so used to doing it through text messaging and other things. Have you in the 4 years you've been out in the work you're doing, certainly interacting with the different age spectrums? Do you feel some of those frustrations?
Well, certainly. I mean, as I talked about my background, I was raised in this household that we had a lot of structure, and that structure was deeply based on human interaction. So my foundation with communication is through eye contact, through observation of people's facial expressions and responses to stimuli. So that's the way I know how to react and interact with people. And since I've come home and I've seen that in general, you know, and ironically, it's a way that the world is trending because it is a younger generation that is growing up in this environment, but we are also like very dependent on technology so that even older folks are adopting these same habits. Even folks like myself who adopt these same habits, I resist it. Like I'm intentional about taking every opportunity I can to meet in person rather than do texting and email. I just made an appointment earlier today, and I said, I'm comfortable with whichever way you would like to meet, but I'm partial to in-person interactions.
Yep.
There's a beautiful thing. This is beautiful technology that is allowing us to have this conversation. But if we were able to, I would much rather be sitting in a room with you, talking to you face to face and sharing that kind of energy and interaction. But yes, it's definitely something I've encountered, but I've learned to see the good and the bad. I've learned to see the power of technology, the power of the internet, that allows us to raise awareness through social media campaigns, through blogging, through podcasts like yours and others. So I see the give and the take up. I just try to make sure that I'm always cognizant of it, and that I always make sure that I stay grounded in this kind of interaction that allows us to conversate and share feedback both ways.
So what I'd like to do is continue your story and ask you, since you've gotten out 4 years ago, I'd like to maybe start with the professional side. You were locked up 22 years. I don't know how many presidencies that was through, that was 22 different Super Bowl champions and so on and so forth. So it's a long time. But what is it that you've done to establish yourself professionally in the last 4 years?
Been a journey. Um, One of the things I like about my current position is because I know how important what I fight for could have been to me had I had these opportunities that I'm working to expand access to. But I came home 22 years, really committed to never going back to prison, obviously, and committed to doing what was right. But what was right? Like, what do I do? I don't have any skills as far as secular and professional, this college degrees. I had none of that. So I came home like not really clear about what I wanted to do. I did not fall for the idea that I would take a vocation in prison and come home and be whatever that vocation was. I took plumbing. I don't have a desire to be a plumber. I took I don't have a desire to be an electrician. Um, though in the back of your mind, you're going to have to find a way to make some money. You're going to have to find a legal means of making money and having some economic mobility to be able to do the things you want to. So I came home, jumped right into advocacy, but it was on a volunteer basis. I was quickly offered a position to be a national spokesperson for the organization called Ignite Justice, and so that kind of led me into this space of meeting all of these people. Some I had met while incarcerated or had heard of. But professionally, I got into sales, man. I got into sales. I got into Ashley's Furniture Home Store. I went for an interview, and I wasn't even that thrilled about it. I actually was kind of like at my wits' end with the application process. And so I went there and I was like, all right, I'll go in and do an interview. And he hired me on the spot. And I worked there for 2 weeks, and I knew immediately, like, yo, I can do this better than everybody around. And I saw it, like I could see it. And so I climbed the ladder from a RSA to an assistant manager to a sales manager. And then, a year and a half later, I had my own store in Roanoke, Virginia. And so I was really proud of that too. I speak about that process with a lot of pride because I didn't have a lot of confidence on fitting in into corporate America. And so I'm sitting at the table with these millionaires, and there's a lot of nerves and anxious, and I'm really anxious, a lot of anxiety. But I saw like, man, they're not smarter than me. They just got letters behind their names. And here I am in the room with him. Here I am at the table with him,
Yeah.
conversating on the same level because we're talking about what was important was the sales process and what Ashley's home store had in store and what their plans would be for the future. I knew that stuff. I knew it I learned it quickly. And as I was working there and climbing the ranks and making good money, I should say, like I made a really nice living there. And I went to speak at a college. I actually went to participate at a college in a panel. And at that panel was the program director for the Virginia Consensus for Higher Education in Prison. And she saw me on the panel, and afterwards, I was visiting some of the organizations that were tabling. And she said, "Listen, I want your contact information. I want us to talk." And shortly after, a week or so after, I heard from her, and she encouraged me to apply for this position. And to be honest with you, man, it was kind of a pay cut, and it involved a move from Lynchburg to the capital of Virginia, which is Richmond. And I had some reservations, but overall, it was quick. Like, you know what? This is what I'm here. This is what I wanted to do from prison. Like, I want to be in this space, helping people that are in the position that I was in, and I couldn't have made a better choice. Like I've been here, moved here. This is the capital. I'm right in the middle of all of the the advocacy, and I'm a lobbyist, so a paid lobbyist for the first time. I've been at the General Assembly, which is our legislative body, every year since I've been home. But I've been there a day or two here, a day or two there. But now this past session that just ended last week, actually, I was there every single day lobbying to pass House Bill 2158, which was a bill that expanded access to college programs to people in the Virginia Department of Corrections. It has a lot of details to it, and it was a very difficult pass, but it is sitting on the governor's desk as we speak, waiting on the signature. So, like, I'm really, really proud of the work that we're doing here and proud to be a part of it and to be good at this. So that's kind of been my journey professionally, and I'm still in the process of figuring out where I'm going. I have I kind of got a desire to run for office. I also want to potentially get my college education. I'm thinking about enrolling at VCU. So a lot of aspirations, but that's been my journey professionally, and I'm proud of it.
And as well you should be. That's terrific. So we want to back up on a couple of things. When you were rising the ranks at Ashley Furniture, right, and you're going to a store manager position or working to the store, did did that necessitate you running training type classes or sales type classes for the employees there?
Yes, but I created them. So the franchise that I worked for had about 11 stores in it, and like I noticed that there was no training programs. There was this high turnover rate for employment, where hire somebody for 60 days, they don't work, get another one, because you're looking for this guy. But I'm like, yo, you're not training anybody, and I'm a natural because I've been selling. It wasn't furniture, but I've been selling for a long time, right? So I had an understanding for profit margins and sales techniques and things like that. I had a understanding where these transferable skills kind of all it was the perfect storm for me to be able to use them. And I was like, well, how can I translate that into some form that I can share with people and make people who are really good at this, we can harvest that from them. So I came up with my own training programs, and I think that that's what kind of helped me climb the ranks. They saw the initiative that I was taking to, pride I was taking in the store and in my job and things of that nature. And I had a lot of moments of like pause, where somebody gives me a key to the store and says, "This is your store, and it's got over $1 million worth of merchandise in it." And I'm like, "This is crazy." I used to, I wouldn't be trusted beyond where they could see me in prison. For 22 years, the assumption is that you're a thug, a thief, and everything you do is monitored. You can't even work in a kitchen without cameras on you, worried that you're still an extra chicken sandwich or something. So, you come from this environment of being a suspect and treated that way every time your cell being searched to somebody handing you a key and saying, "Hey, take care of this." And so these there were these moments of pause, like, look at me, man, look how far I've come, look at where I'm going when I couldn't even see it in prison. And I hope that guys and women that are watching this, that have opportunity to see this, really hone in on that thing, because I know you may be sitting in a cell watching this in a visiting room, in a gym, wherever you are, and you may be taking in this information. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean that it's not there for you to have. And so, force yourself to imagine and do your best to learn everything you can about the world that you're headed back into, because you can have whatever you want to, whatever it is that you desire. You may want to be a plumber. You may want to be a data scientist, a data analyst. Whatever it is that you think you can do, don't doubt yourself. And yes, you're up against immeasurable odds, but we're thinkers by nature. And sometimes overthinking is what has got us into some of those situations. But I promise you, do not sit in prison feeling daunted and discouraged. Feel ready, empowered to come out here and do whatever you would like to do. The world is yours.
So I'd like to draw a couple of things that I saw from your story to this point, and that is that those sales meetings were an outgrowth of going to a counselor saying, I want to do some sort of a information session that you're creating. So now you're creating a sales training program, right? And so you said the franchisor had 11 stores, whether it was corporate or an individual, whatever it was, but you know, you established the value, your value. And I think that's kind of the how I would piggyback what you were just talking about is if we come out and show value through our work ethic, through our creativity, through our ability to take on leadership roles, to take a chance on some things, we become extremely valuable to the employer. And my experience since I've been out is that the background, whatever our background is, it fades away. That's not what's relevant. What's relevant is that you put together a training program that helps the business owners retain their employees and make more money with those employees, right? So there's where we bring value. And I wanted to kind of just say that part out loud, that sometimes there is no, you talk about having that vision. Sometimes it's not a straight line. It's not a direct, this is what this is going to lead to. It's here's some things that I did while I was away, some things that I built on while I was away, and then all of a sudden they become very valuable or very useful for us to improve our situation within our career.
I want to piggyback off of that, because and by the way, this is how my life has been. My life has been full of eye-opening experiences since I've been home, and I mean they are still coming. There's still a lot of firsts, man. I was locked up since I was 21, so I go to places for the first time. Getting on a plane for the first time, going to this city for the first time. All of that, a lot of firsts. And I went to this event. I referenced it earlier, actually, because I went to. It was just a couple days ago, but it was Aunt Viv from the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air that was on this panel, as well as Dr. Cece Moon, Dr. Cece Joy Moon. She was the head of DEI, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for the Biden administration. And of course, she lost her job when all of this nonsense just happened. But she was from here in Richmond, and she spoke about her first day in DC when she got sent up there. She called a colleague and said, "Hey, I'm really nervous," and da 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 da. And she said the colleague showed no mercy and said, "Man, we don't got time for that. We don't have time for nervous and how you feel. Here's an opportunity to change the world. Just do it. Bring your value and do it." And then she went on to say that it is important that you realize the value you bring into the room, and not try to figure out what the room needs. You bring what you bring. You bring who you are. That is a value within itself. And if I could do anything over again, which you can't, but coming home was that I wouldn't waste time on any of the exact anxiety of, do I fit in here? Yes, you fit in here. You fit in wherever you want to be. And when you go in a room confident in who you are and confident in what you offer, then you have a new, you find a sense of purpose. I'm sitting in rooms with legislators, man. I got to go talk to legislators about these bills. These are delegates and senators, a lot of them with egos, a lot of them are really rich, a lot of them are really wealthy. But do they know what I'm talking about better than me? Nope. They haven't studied this stuff as long as I've studied it. They have to take care of a million different things. I'm the expert on this. right? I know what I'm bringing and I know why I'm there. And that has changed my perspective when I walk in these rooms. I don't feel insufficient. I don't feel like I'm going to, David and Goliath. I feel like I'm a giant too. I feel like I bring my own giant expertise to every situation I come in. I'm there with an open ear and an open mind, willing to learn, but I also know what I know and what I want to teach and what I want to share. And I encourage everybody to feel like that. Feel empowered. Your value is in who you are. You don't have to do anything more than that.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the other side. I agree with everything you said, but my struggles when I got out professionally, I stand in front of groups of 500 and I talk with complete confidence and have no issue with that. But especially when I first got out, put me in a room with 8 people and I question whether I should be in the room. What do they know
Uh-huh.
about me? What are they thinking about me? And it
Uh-huh.
really, it manifests itself as social anxiety. And it was this, the two distinct parts. The one part was I'm talking in front of groups of people, or I'm speaking of power, talking to a sheriff's office and the sheriff and what have you about bringing our program in there and with complete confidence. But then I get into a social situation, and I say that I'm generally the last one to talk. I mean, it takes me a while to warm up and get comfortable. And so what you say is very encouraging.
Uh-huh.
And but may I just add to that we need to recognize that it's okay to feel a certain way, to have certain anxieties and what have you, and we just keep trying to work through those. I promise you that if you have those types of anxieties and situations, you are absolutely not alone. And
I appreciate you bringing that forward too, because like that's an important aspect of it. Because in no way do I want anybody. It's a natural feeling for a lot of people, and it's worse for some people than others. I really just want people to feel empowered to know that like you can work your way through that stuff. You know what I'm saying? And you don't have to dwell in that space or in that feeling. But if you feel that way, don't feel like you're odd. It's a natural reaction, right? I'm a performer. I do music. I rap, right? And so I'm used to being in that space. Like even while I grew up in Jehovah's Witnesses, we were doing public speaking at 6 years old, reading Bible verses and learning how to do gestures and all this stuff. So I'm comfortable like you are in front of 500 people. And then you get into that room where it's a little bit more intimate, and then there's, because of social status, right?
yes,
Because somebody has a PhD or somebody spent 10 years working in this capacity or this person's a celebrity, you can get lost in that much, you know what I'm saying? But you have to learn conviction, confidence in who you are. And so do the best you can to know who you are and know what you bring to a table.
and to that end, I think a great place to do that is on the inside, to sharpen our minds, to continue to expand the things that we learn, the thing to we can work on skills like the ability to articulate our thoughts. We can do all those things on the inside. We can practice it all the time. And now when I do stand in front of a group of people or I have to advocate for myself to an employer during an interview, I feel comfortable and confident in doing that because that's kind of my anchor that I can go back to. Like you were saying just a few moments ago, because I know this space, I know what I'm talking about. They may have all these other things going on, but I'm there because I'm an expert in this topic. We can do that. I firmly believe we can do that, but it's not given to us, right? I mean, you spend a lot of time getting to that level that you know what you're talking about, and so that's the commitment. This is not something that is just handed over. It's something that we earn, and then we're able to hopefully utilize to further ourselves professionally. So
100% agree. It is definitely a practice behavior. And hey, I'm 4 years out. It didn't happen the second day I got home. It was a process of coming into these situations repetitively. And the more you get attached to what your purpose is, then a lot of times the more confidence you get. I mean, you're doing this podcast because you know this is what you're supposed to be doing. You know you're on the journey, and this is part of that journey. And so I'm sure you have a lot of confidence and conviction about the way you do it. You have a vision, you know what you want to see done, and you bring the guest on that you would like to have. And I think that's very similar to whatever pursuit that we choose. Whether it's in this public sector of advocacy or whether it's in just in professionalism, being an electrician or being a scientist or a doctor, whatever it is that you want to do, then I just, if it's your path, then, embrace, indulge yourself or engulf yourself in it and be as much of it as you can be and be present in the moment, is extremely important.
So before we move on, and I ask you to leave our audience with a message, um, several times in the conversation you've mentioned advocacy. So for those on the inside that are watching this that aren't familiar with that term, or even on the outside for that matter, that aren't familiar with that term, will you define what that means and then also specifically how that's part of what you do professionally?
So yeah, advocacy means to me to elevate the voice of the voiceless, or to bring attention to and awareness to the struggles of folks or of a particular issue. There's all kinds of advocacy. I'm, big into criminal justice advocacy, but man, there are advocacy for pet rights, for environmental justice.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to a spoken word meeting tonight where it talks about the intersection between environmental justice and racial justice. And so, it's advocacy is about bringing attention and awareness and advocating for a group or a particular issue. I'm professionally, as my job, working with the Virginia Consensus for Higher Education in Prison, where I advocate for expanding access to college programs for people in prison. What that means is in 1994, with the tough on crime things, they made eligibility to Pell funding impossible for people incarcerated. We went from 1,200 prison education programs in 1995 to seven by 1999. And while I was in prison, they were pretty much extinct. There was some correspondence courses, but there were no Pell funding to pay for that. Now we got that back. 2023 of all folks, we were able to see a bill signed that effectively reinstated Pell funding eligibility for hundreds of thousands, actually millions of folks incarcerated across the country. And so now my job is to work to start to create the structure that will allow for these programs to exist in institutions across the state of Virginia. And it's no small task. When I first was told about this issue, I thought it was an easy thing. No, there's technology issues.
Yep.
There is facilities who don't want you there. So we're
Yep.
having to fight against all of those forces. It's a shift in penal philosophy from one of being punitive to one of being rehabilitative and redemptive. So that's where I exist professionally, but I still volunteer criminal justice reform. I'm the president of the Virginia Justice Alliance, and we work on reform issues across the board. Working to get canines out of prison. So we'll stop these attack dogs here in Virginia, working to end or at least limit the use of solitary confinement. But that's what that means. And I find myself advocating for more things outside of the criminal justice realm as I become more aware of all of the factors that lead people on this path that a lot of us end up going down. In fact, millions of us end up going down here in this country.
Well, Kenny, that's been great. So what I'd like to do is ask you to take a couple of minutes and just look in the camera and remember that, this podcast, this little podcast that we started, and I had no idea how it was going to go, but we're now on more than 1 million tablets in jails and prisons around the country. So it's a big megaphone. And if you'll, just take a couple of minutes and just leave whatever message you want to leave with, there's some, as you well know, there's some pretty dark days on the inside. So somebody's having a bad day watching this right now. What are some things you want them to know about what could lie ahead?
I think I'll start by saying something that a lot of people may be familiar with, but we as America make up 5% of the world's population, and we have 25% of the world's prison population. The reason why that's an important statistic to me is because I want to tell the people that's incarcerated, I realize that there are things that you may have done to get you in your situation, and I appreciate the accountability. In fact, it's important. But I also want you to know that it ain't you all the time. This is a system that is designed to work a certain way. And so I don't want you, I want you to be able to look in the mirror and not be consumed with guilt or lack of self-worth. And I want you to be able to tie your shoes up and say, I want to fight. I want to fight to make conditions better. I want to fight against the laws and policies that have led you into the situation you are in. I want you to fight for self betterment and self empowerment. And I want you to resist the urge to fall into this gulf of despair, depression, and despondency, because those waste a lot of time and opportunity. You have the greatest resource that people out here just don't have. You got time. And I don't mean to belittle the time that you're doing, but I promise you, when it's all said and done, when you do make it out here into these streets, you're going to realize how much time you had, because you don't have that luxury out here. You got to stay busy just to survive out here, and time flies by. So while you have the time, take advantage of it. You know what I mean? Read, study, look into yourself, intuitive, learn who you are as a person, figure out what you want to do, challenge yourself, right? And don't be scared to smile. While you're in prison, don't be scared to smile. There's no guilt in smiling. There's no guilt in finding joy even while you're in prison. It doesn't mean you love prison. It means that you are in control of your emotions and you are in control of how you feel every day. So get up, look in the mirror, smile, and be gracious about being alive and having an opportunity to be mentally free and one day physically free. And log on to vchep.org. Reach out to me, man. Kenneth at virginiainterfaithcenter.org if you want to get an email to me. I love conversating and just passing good energy to my brothers and sisters who are still incarcerated. We here in Virginia, man, but I'm all over trying to reach y'all. So and though I'm from prison, and that's the important thing for me to say, and I'm one of the advocates, I promise you I'm one of a million. And there are a lot of people who care about you, man. There are a lot of folks out there who care about your well-being, care about how you're treated. Do not fall for the hype that America is just a place where everybody doesn't care about. No, that's just what the image that they put out there. People care about you, man. People care about you and want to see you well. Please be well. And I look forward to seeing some of you on this side as soon as possible.
As we've said before, this is the Path Forward podcast. You can write to us, and we will forward any letters that are sent here. We'll forward them on to Kenny so he can respond to them. And I appreciate that you've taken the time to join me today. Your story is great, as I knew it would be after our first conversation. Very inspirational and also eye-opening on a number of levels. And I'm hoping that on the inside, the men and women have taken some hope out of that and some thought out of that as to how they might want to do their time or how they might want to prepare themselves for release. So I'm Augie Ghilarducci. I'm your host of the Path Forward podcast. This was my guest today, Kenny Hunter, and we appreciate you being here to join us and watch this. And we encourage you to continue to watch new episodes. We release a new episode every 2 weeks. Thank you.